Danny Carter wiped the grease from his hands and checked his tool belt one more time. The maintenance tunnels of Station Kepler 229 were always dark, always cold, and always full of surprises. He had been working on the station for 2 years now, fixing pipes and wiring that kept thousands of aliens alive in the black void of space. It was not glamorous work, but it was honest, and Danny liked honest work. He moved through the lower tunnels with practiced ease, his headlamp cutting through the darkness. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth, and it housed dozens of alien species. Most of them ignored Danny. Humans were still new to the galaxy, still viewed with suspicion by the older races. Danny did not mind. He kept his head down, did his job, and tried not to cause trouble. The call came through on his comm unit just as he was finishing a routine check on the water recycling system. It was automated, just a diagnostic report showing a pressure drop in Section 7 Delta. Danny frowned. That section was supposed to be sealed off for renovations. No one should be down there. He made his way through the twisting corridors, following the maintenance signs that only workers like him could read. The station was a maze, but Danny had walked every tunnel at least once. He knew the shortcuts, the dead ends, the places where the artificial gravity flickered if you jumped too hard. Section 7 Delta was quiet when he arrived. Too quiet. The pressure readings on his handheld scanner were dropping fast, which meant air was leaking somewhere. Danny moved faster, his boots clanging on the metal floor. If there was a hull breach, he needed to seal it before the whole section depressurized. That was when he heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold. It was a cry, high-pitched and desperate, coming from behind a collapsed bulkhead. Danny ran toward the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached the cave-in, he saw the problem immediately. Someone had tried to modify the structural supports without authorization, and the whole wall had come down. Debris blocked the corridor, twisted metal and broken panels forming a barrier that looked impossible to move. But the crying was coming from the other side. Danny pressed his ear against a gap in the wreckage and heard voices. Young voices, children. He triggered his comm unit immediately. "This is Carter in 7 Delta. I have a collapse with possible casualties. I need emergency response right now." The response came back within seconds, but it was not what Danny wanted to hear. "Carter, this is Security Chief Vorath. Stand down and wait for proper equipment." That is a direct order. Danny looked at his scanner. The air pressure behind the wall was dropping fast. He did not need to be an engineer to know what that meant. Whoever was trapped back there was running out of air. "Chief, there are people trapped in there. Kids, I think. They need help now." "You will wait for authorization." Vorath's voice was hard and cold. "Any deviation from protocol will result in criminal charges. Security out." Danny stared at his comm unit for a long moment. He thought about his nephew back on Earth, about the boy's laugh and bright eyes. He thought about the time he had pulled a kid from a frozen lake, about how the parents had cried and thanked him. He thought about what his grandmother used to tell him, that doing the right thing was not always the easy thing. Then he turned off his comm unit and started moving debris. The gap was small, barely wide enough for his shoulders, but Danny forced himself through. Sharp edges tore at his uniform and cut his arms, but he did not stop. On the other side of the collapse he found them. 6 Vicari cubs, their scales still bright with youth, huddled together in the darkness. They were the children of the reptilian species that made up most of the station's security force. Their eyes were wide with fear, and 2 of them were bleeding from cuts on their heads. "Hey," Danny said softly, keeping his voice calm. "I'm Danny, I'm here to help you." The cubs stared at him. Vicari were taught from birth to fear humans, to see them as dangerous and unpredictable. But these cubs were trapped and scared, and Danny was the only one who had come for them. The smallest one, a female with dark green scales, whimpered. "We cannot breathe. The air is bad." Danny checked his scanner and cursed under his breath. The oxygen level was at 15% and dropping. In another hour, maybe less, these kids would suffocate. He looked back at the gap he had crawled through. It was too small for the cubs. They would never fit, and he did not have the tools to make it bigger. "Okay," Danny said, thinking fast. "Listen to me. All of you. Come here and sit down. We're going to be okay, but I need you to stay calm." He pulled out his emergency oxygen supply, a small tank meant for 1 person. It would not be enough for all of them, but it would buy time. Danny showed the cubs how to use the mask, giving each of them a few breaths before passing it to the next. He called for help again on his comm, but security told him the same thing. Wait for proper authorization. Danny turned his comm off again. He would deal with the consequences later. He spent the next 3 hours keeping the cubs alive. He used his first aid kit to clean and bandage their wounds. He shared his water ration with them. He told them stories about Earth to keep their minds off the fear. When the smallest cub, the one called Kessa, started to cry, Danny held her hand and sang a lullaby his grandmother had taught him. His voice was rough and off-key, but Kessa closed her eyes and squeezed his hand. The oxygen tank ran dry. Danny gave the last breath to Kessa, who was weakest. His own lungs burned as the air grew thin. His vision started to blur at the edges, but he kept talking to the cubs, kept holding their hands, kept promising them that someone would come. When the rescue team finally broke through the wall, they found Danny unconscious on the floor. His body curled around the smallest cub. All 6 cubs were alive. Bruised, scared, but alive. Security Chief Vorath was the first through the breach. He was a massive Vakari, his scales dark with age, his eyes cold and hard. He looked at Danny, at the unconscious human who had defied his direct orders, and his jaw tightened. "Arrest him," Vorath said. "When he wakes up, he will answer for his crimes." The medics carried Danny away on a stretcher. The cubs watched him go, their small claws linked together. They did not speak. They did not cry. They just watched as the human who had saved them was taken away in chains. Kessa looked up at Chief Vorath, at the towering figure of authority, and something changed in her young eyes. Something hard and certain. She did not say anything, not yet. But she would remember this moment for the rest of her life. She would remember who came when they needed help, and she would remember who gave the order to wait. Danny woke up in the medical facility with a splitting headache and an oxygen mask on his face. His arms were bandaged where the metal had cut him, and his chest ached with every breath. A nurse, a delicate Minari with silver fur, checked his vital signs and said nothing. Her large eyes held something that might have been sympathy, but she left quickly when a security guard entered the room. "You are under arrest," the guard said. "When the doctors clear you, you will be transferred to holding." Danny nodded. He had expected this. He had broken direct orders from a security chief. In the rigid hierarchy of the collective, that was a serious crime. It did not matter that he had saved 6 lives. Rules were rules, and Danny had broken them. They moved him to a holding cell 6 hours later. It was small and clean, with a bed, a toilet, and nothing else. Through the transparent wall, Danny could see other cells, most of them empty. The station did not have much crime. Most species followed the rules without question. The tribunal was convened the next day. Danny watched it on a video screen in his cell, seeing the council chamber filled with representatives from a dozen different species. Chief Vorath stood at the center, his voice booming as he laid out the charges: unauthorized access, violation of direct orders, reckless endangerment. Each charge carried serious penalties, including permanent expulsion from collective space. "This human," Vorath said, his words dripping with contempt, "has demonstrated the exact qualities that make his species dangerous. He acts on impulse without regard for authority or proper procedure. He believes his judgment is superior to established protocol. If we allow this behavior to go unpunished, we invite chaos." Danny listened and felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Vorath was not just angry about the rule violation. He was angry about being defied. This was personal. Then the cubs were brought in and everything changed. 6 young Vakari entered the chamber walking in a line. Their parents were there too, standing at attention in their security uniforms, their faces unreadable. The cubs stood before the council, small and young, but there was something different about them now. They stood straight, their claws linked together, forming a chain. Councillor Prine, a flowing aquatic being who spoke through a translation device, addressed them first. Her voice was gentle. "Young ones, we need to understand what happened in the tunnels." "Can you tell us what the human said to you?" The cubs said nothing. They stared straight ahead, their eyes fixed on some point beyond the council. Chief Vorath stepped forward, his massive form towering over them. "You will answer the council's questions. This is not a request." Still, the cubs remained silent. Danny watched from his cell, confused and worried. Why were they not speaking? What were they protecting? He had not told them any secrets or made any promises. He had just tried to keep them alive. The council grew frustrated. They questioned the cubs one by one, separating them, trying different approaches. Councillor Prine asked gently, A Solani diplomat tried humor. Chief Vorath used his command voice, the tone that made grown warriors snap to attention. Nothing worked. The cubs would not speak about what had happened in the tunnel. This is manipulation, Vorath declared. The human has conditioned these young ones to protect him. He used psychological tactics to turn them against their own species. Kessa, the smallest cub, looked up at Vorath for the first time. Her voice was tiny but clear. No. That single word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Young Vicari did not contradict their elders. They did not challenge authority. It was not in their nature, not in their culture. Yet Kessa had done exactly that. Vorath's eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, but Kessa said nothing more. She looked back down at the floor, her jaw set in a way that reminded Danny of his grandmother when she had made up her mind about something. The tribunal adjourned for the day with no answers. The cubs were returned to their families, and Danny was left alone in his cell. He thought about calling for Lisa Park, the human diplomatic attaché, but decided against it. This was his problem. He would face it alone. But that night, Danny received an unexpected visitor. One of the cubs' fathers, a security officer named Greth, came to his cell. The Vicari stood outside the transparent wall, his expression troubled. My son Thrax will not speak, Greth said. He has always been obedient, always followed the rules, but now he refuses to explain what you did in that tunnel. The security psychologists say the cubs are showing signs of trauma bonding, that you somehow made them dependent on you. Danny sat up on his bed. I didn't do anything except keep them calm. I told them stories. I shared my air. That's all? Then why will they not speak? Danny thought about it. He remembered Kessa's small hand in his, how she had stopped crying when he sang to her. He remembered how all the cubs had huddled close, drawing comfort from his presence. Maybe, he said slowly, they think that if they explain it, people won't understand. Maybe they think the words won't be enough. Greth studied him for a long moment. You gave them your air, all of it. The medics say you were minutes from death when the rescue team arrived. They were kids, Danny said simply. What else was I supposed to do? The Vicari's expression shifted, something flickering in his eyes that might have been respect. Most species would have calculated their own survival first. It is logical, necessary, maybe, but I couldn't live with myself if I had let them die to save myself. Greth left without another word, but Danny saw him pause at the door and look back. The Vicari's expression was troubled, confused, as if he had seen something that did not fit with his understanding of the universe. The next day, the interrogations intensified. Security brought in specialists, experts in child psychology from 3 different species. They questioned the cubs separately, using techniques designed to break down resistance without causing harm. They told the cubs that Danny would be punished unless they cooperated. They said their silence was hurting him more than helping. The cubs gave nothing. Each one, when pressed hard enough, would say a single sentence and then fall silent again. Thrax said. He stayed when it hurt, Nira said. He gave us his air, Gorak said. He sang to us. Zena said. He was not afraid, Pike said. He chose us. And Kessa, when Chief Vorath loomed over her and demanded answers, looked up at him and repeated the words she had said before. He did not leave us. The psychologist analyzed every word, searching for hidden meanings. Security ran voice stress tests, looking for signs of deception. The cubs' parents were questioned about any previous contact with humans, any indication that Danny might have groomed their children for this response. They found nothing. Just 6 young Vicari who refused to explain why they trusted a human more than they feared authority. Danny watched it all on his video screen, feeling sick. This was wrong. The cubs should not be punished for his choices. He triggered the communication panel in his cell and requested an immediate audience with the tribunal. I'll plead guilty, he told them when they connected, to everything. All the charges. Just leave the cubs alone. They're kids. They don't deserve this. Chief Vorath appeared on the screen, his face cold. You will plead guilty regardless. Your admission changes nothing. We need to understand what you did to those cubs, what hold you have over them. I don't have any hold over them, Danny said, frustration creeping into his voice. I just didn't let them die. That's all. Then why will they not explain their loyalty to you? Danny thought about the question. He thought about the way Kessa had held his hand in the darkness, how she had trusted him completely even though her people had taught her to fear humans. Maybe, he said, because loyalty doesn't need an explanation. You either understand it or you don't. The screen went dark. Danny sat in his cell and waited for the next day, when his fate would be decided. He did not know that outside his cell, the Cubs had made a decision of their own. A decision that would change everything. The news broke during the morning shift change. 6 Vicari Cubs had escaped from their family quarters during the night. Security found them in the maintenance tunnels of Section 7 Delta, the same tunnels where Danny had saved their lives. They had barricaded themselves inside, using debris and maintenance equipment to block the entrances. They were not coming out. The message they sent to security was simple and direct. We stand with Danny Carter. We will not move until he is free. The station erupted into chaos. Vicari parents rushed to the tunnels, demanding their children come out. Security tried to negotiate using every diplomatic trick they knew. The Cubs refused to respond. They had food and water, supplies they must have stolen and hidden before their escape. They were prepared to wait. Chief Vorath was furious. He stormed through the security center, his tail lashing behind him like a whip. This is rebellion. These Cubs have been corrupted by human influence. We will extract them by force if necessary. But Counselor Prine stopped him. You cannot use force against children, Chief. The other species are watching. If we harm these Cubs to punish a human, it will destroy our credibility. Then what do you suggest? Vorath snarled. We let them dictate terms? We allow children to override the authority of the collective? Prine's flowing form shifted colors, a sign of deep thought. We need to understand why they feel such loyalty to this human. Until we do, any action we take may make things worse. Danny learned about the situation when a guard told him during breakfast. The guard, a young Orlith warrior, seemed almost amused. Those Cubs have more courage than most soldiers I have known. They barricade themselves in a tunnel for you. Danny dropped his food tray. They did what? Are they safe? Are they hurt? They are fine. Scared their parents badly, though. Half the security force is trying to get them out. Danny grabbed the bars of his cell. You have to let me talk to them. I'll tell them to come out. They shouldn't be doing this for me. But the guard shook his head. Chief Vorath has forbidden any contact. He thinks you will use it to strengthen your hold over them. Danny wanted to scream. This was insane. He had not asked the Cubs to do this. He had not wanted any of this. All he had done was keep them alive, and now everything was spinning out of control. Outside the station, word was spreading through the collective networks. The image of 6 young Vicari defending a human against their own species was shocking. Some species saw it as proof of human manipulation. Others saw it as something different, something that challenged their understanding of loyalty and duty. The Minari, a species that valued family bonds above everything, started a petition for Danny's release. Within hours, thousands of signatures appeared from across the station. The Orlith, warriors who respected courage and honor, sent a formal letter to the tribunal supporting Danny's actions. Even some Vicari began to question whether the punishment fit the crime, but Chief Vorath would not bend. He called a press conference and announced his decision. Danny Carter will be expelled from this station and banned from all collective space permanently. Furthermore, the Cubs' families will face disciplinary review for failing to raise obedient offspring. The Cubs themselves will be sent to a correctional education facility where they will learn proper respect for authority. The announcement hit the station like a bomb. The Cubs' parents were devastated. To be disciplined for their children's behavior was a deep shame in Vicari culture. And to have their Cubs sent away to a correctional facility was something that had not happened in generations. In the tunnels, the Cubs heard the announcement through a maintenance comm line they had activated. Kessa, who had become the unofficial leader of the group, looked at her companions. They will separate us. They will take us away and make us forget. We cannot let that happen, Thrax said. His voice was steady, but his claws trembled. Danny did not abandon us. We will not abandon him, the other Cubs agreed. They reinforced their barricades and settled in for a long wait. Lisa Park, the human diplomatic attaché, had been watching the situation carefully. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind, and she understood politics better than anyone on the station. She requested an emergency meeting with the full tribunal, pulling every favor she had to make it happen. They gave her 10 minutes to speak. Lisa stood before the council and began her presentation. She did not waste time with pleasantries. You do not understand humans, she said bluntly. And because you do not understand us, you cannot understand why those cubs are willing to risk everything for Danny Carter. Chief Vorath leaned forward. Then enlighten us. Lisa pulled up images on the main screen. Pictures of Earth, of human history, of the long journey from caves to starships. Humans evolved as social primates. We survived not because we were strong or fast, but because we formed bonds. We protected each other. We shared resources with those outside our immediate family. This behavior is hardwired into our brains. It is not a choice. It is who we are. She brought up Danny's file. Danny Carter was a volunteer firefighter on Earth. He ran into 3 burning buildings to save strangers. He pulled a child from a frozen lake and nearly died from hypothermia. He spent his weekends teaching children sports for free. This is not unusual behavior for humans. This is expected behavior. Counselor Prine's colors shifted to a deep blue, a sign of understanding. You are saying that what he did in the tunnels was instinctive? More than instinctive. It was moral. Humans teach their children from birth that you help those in need. You do not calculate the cost. You do not weigh the politics. You see someone in danger and you act. Danny Carter did exactly what every human child is taught to do. Chief Vorath slammed his hand on the table. This is exactly why humans are dangerous. They act on emotion rather than logic. They disrupt order with their unpredictable behavior. Lisa turned to face him directly. Chief Vorath, your cubs are currently sitting in a dark tunnel, refusing to leave until a human is freed. They are not doing this because Danny manipulated them. They are doing this because he showed them something your culture has forgotten. He showed them that sometimes the right thing to do is worth the personal cost. The chamber fell silent. Several council members exchanged glances. Lisa pressed her advantage. Those cubs learned loyalty from Danny Carter. Not blind obedience to authority, but real loyalty. The kind that is earned through sacrifice and action. They understand something that you seem to have forgotten. Loyalty is not given to systems or rules. Loyalty is given to those who prove themselves trustworthy when it matters most. She gestured to the screen showing the sealed tunnel. Danny Carter earned their loyalty in the most fundamental way possible. He put their lives above his own. He shared his last breath with the weakest among them. And when you arrested him for saving them, those cubs learned another lesson. They learned that sometimes you have to stand up for what is right even when everyone tells you to obey. Chief Vorath's jaw tightened. You suggest we reward disobedience? I suggest, Lisa said quietly, that you consider what you are teaching not just those 6 cubs, but every young being on this station. If you punish Danny for saving their lives, you tell them that rules matter more than life. If you punish the cubs for defending the one who saved them, you tell them that loyalty is meaningless. The tribunal adjourned to consider her words. Danny watched from his cell, his heart pounding. He did not know if Lisa's speech would make any difference, but he knew that somewhere in the tunnels, 6 young Vicari were counting on him, and he would not let them down, not again. The tribunal met in private chambers for 6 hours. Outside the station held its breath. The cubs remained in the tunnels. Their parents stood vigil outside the barricades, calling to their children, begging them to come out. The cubs would not answer. They had made their choice. Inside the council chambers, the debate was fierce. Some members argued for strict enforcement of the law. Rules existed for a reason, and breaking them could not be tolerated. Others argued that the spirit of the law mattered more than the letter. Danny had saved 6 lives. That had to count for something. Chief Vorath stood firm. If we allow this human to go unpunished, we set a dangerous precedent. Every species will think they can ignore our protocols when it suits them. The collective will collapse into chaos. But Counselor Prine had been thinking deeply about Lisa's words. She had spent the break reviewing Danny's file, reading every report, watching every security recording from his 2 years on the station. What she found troubled her. Chief Vorath, she said, her translation device giving her words a musical quality. I have reviewed this human's record. In 2 years, he has never been late for work. Never filed a complaint. Never caused any incident. By every measure, he has been a model worker. Yet you speak of him as if he is a criminal. He violated direct orders, Vorath said. Nothing else matters. Everything else matters, Prine countered. Context matters. Intent matters. Result matters. Danny Carter saved 6 young lives. That is not a crime. That is heroism. A Solani counselor, a being of crystalline structure, spoke up. But he broke the chain of command. If everyone acts independently without coordination, Rescue operations become dangerous. People die, Prine nodded. A valid concern. But consider this. The rescue team took 3 hours to arrive. The cubs would have been dead in 1 hour. Danny Carter assessed the situation and made a choice. He could follow orders and let children die, or he could break orders and save them. He chose to save them. Is that not exactly what we would want any being to do? The debate continued, but Prine could see some members wavering. She needed something more, something that would make them understand what the cubs already knew. She requested permission to visit Danny in his cell. The tribunal agreed. Danny was lying on his bed staring at the ceiling when Prine arrived. Her aquatic form floated in a containment suit, colors shifting across her surface. She regarded him through the transparent wall with eyes that saw more than most species could comprehend. "Danny Carter," she said, "I need to understand something. What did you say to those cubs in the tunnels? What promise did you make that would inspire such fierce loyalty?" Danny sat up, rubbing his face. He looked tired, older than his years. "I keep telling everyone. I didn't promise them anything. I just tried to keep them calm." "But what did you talk about?" Danny thought back to those dark hours, to the fear in the cubs' eyes and the terrible certainty that they might not survive. "I told them about my nephew, about how he likes to play with toy spaceships. I told them about the first time I went into space and how scared I was. I talked about my grandmother's cooking, which was terrible but made with love. When they cried, I held their hands. When the smallest one got really scared, I sang to her." Prine's colors shifted to a soft amber, and when the air ran low, Danny's voice became quiet. Kessa was fading. She was the smallest and she was having the hardest time breathing. The oxygen tank was almost empty. I gave her the last of it. "You knew you might die?" "Yeah, but I'm an adult. She's a kid." The choice was obvious. Prine drifted closer to the transparent wall. "Obvious to you. Most species would have calculated survival odds. They would have saved themselves, reasoning that 1 life is better than 7 deaths. It is basic logic." Danny shook his head. "Maybe it's logical, but I couldn't do it. How do you live with yourself after that? How do you look in the mirror knowing you let a child die to save yourself? So you chose death over dishonor." "I chose what felt right. I didn't really think about it that way." Prine studied him for a long moment. Her colors cycled through patterns that conveyed deep thought in her species. Finally, she spoke. "You did not make a promise to those cubs. You showed them something. You showed them what you believe in, what you value more than your own life. They are not defending you because you manipulated them. They are defending you because they saw your true character in the worst possible moment, and they recognized something worth protecting." Danny did not know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as special or heroic. He had just done what anyone should do. Prine returned to the tribunal with her findings. She requested the floor and presented her conclusion. "I have spoken with Danny Carter at length. I have reviewed every moment of the rescue, and I have reached a conclusion that some of you will not like." She paused, letting her words settle. The cubs are not protecting Danny because he manipulated them. They are protecting him because he demonstrated a moral quality that transcends species and culture. In the moment of greatest danger, when his own life was at risk, he chose to protect the vulnerable. He did not calculate odds or consider consequences. He simply acted according to his deepest values. Chief Voreth stood up. "Counselor, with respect, this is emotional reasoning. The law is clear." "The law exists to protect life," Prine said firmly. Danny Carter protected life. He violated procedure to achieve the very goal our laws are designed to ensure. If we punish him for that, we make our laws meaningless. Another counselor, a massive Dendari with bark-like skin, rumbled his agreement. The cubs understand this instinctively. That is why they stand with him. They know in a way that transcends words that what Danny did was right. We are the ones who are confused. The Solani counselor spoke again, his crystalline body refracting light in complex patterns. But what of the precedent? If we excuse this violation, where do we draw the line? Prine had thought about this. We draw the line at intent and outcome. Danny did not violate orders out of arrogance or disrespect. He did it to save lives, and he succeeded. Those are the factors we must weigh. Was the violation necessary? Yes. Was the outcome positive? Yes, then we can excuse the violation while still maintaining the importance of protocol. The debate continued, but the tone had shifted. More counselors were speaking in Danny's favor. Even some of the Vicari representatives were beginning to question whether strict adherence to protocol was worth the cost. Outside, the cubs were growing cold and hungry in the tunnels. Their parents were desperate. Security was running out of options. The entire station was waiting to see what the tribunal would decide. Chief Vorath made one final argument. If we release this human, we tell every being in the collective that humans are above the law. We invite them to spread their chaos throughout our orderly society. Prine's colors flashed with something that might have been anger. No, Chief. If we punish this human for saving children, we tell every being in the collective that we value rules more than life. We tell them that blind obedience is more important than moral courage. And we teach our young that loyalty to those who protect them is a crime. She turned to address the full council. Those 6 cubs are sitting in a dark tunnel right now, refusing to abandon the one who saved them. They give us nothing but their silence because they believe correctly that their actions speak louder than any words. They are teaching us a lesson if we are wise enough to learn it. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules, and sometimes loyalty is earned not through authority, but through sacrifice. The tribunal called for a vote. It would be close. The future of one human, 6 cubs, and perhaps the relationship between their species hung in the balance. The vote took 2 hours. Each council member spoke their position, explaining their reasoning for the record. Some spoke of law and order, of the need for consistency in applying rules. Others spoke of mercy, of context, of the spirit versus the letter of the law. The chamber was tense, every word carefully weighed. When the final count came in, Councillor Prine announced the results. By a vote of 12-9, this tribunal has decided to drop all charges against Danny Carter. Furthermore, we issue him a formal commendation for bravery and quick thinking in a crisis situation. The chamber erupted. Chief Vorath stood up, his voice thundering. This is a mistake. You will regret this decision. I hereby register an official protest and resign my position, effective immediately. He stormed out of the chamber, his tail lashing behind him. Several other Vicari followed him, their faces dark with anger, but more stayed behind, including some who had voted against Danny. They understood that even in defeat there were proper ways to behave. The news spread through the station within minutes. In the tunnels, the cubs heard the announcement and finally opened their barricades. They emerged tired, dirty, and hungry, but their eyes were bright. They had won. Their human was free. Danny was released from his cell 1 hour later. The guards who escorted him out were respectful, some even apologetic. One of them, the young Orlith warrior, clasped his shoulder. You did a brave thing. The cubs knew it even if the chiefs did not. Danny walked through the station in a daze, hardly believing it was over. He expected to return to his quarters alone, to rest and try to process everything that had happened. Instead, he found 6 Vicari cubs waiting for him outside the security building. They did not say anything. They did not need to. They simply formed a circle around him and walked with him as he made his way home. Other species stopped to watch. This strange sight of a human surrounded by young Vicari, moving through the station like a small tribe. The image was captured by station security cameras and spread across the collective networks within hours. Different species interpreted it in different ways. Some saw it as a warning about human unpredictability. Others saw it as proof of humanity's capacity for good. But everyone who saw it understood that something important had happened, something that would change how humans were viewed in the galaxy. Danny returned to his maintenance work the next day. He did not expect things to be different, but they were. Workers from other species nodded to him in the corridors. Some even stopped to thank him, telling him that what he did mattered. The cubs visited him regularly, bringing their parents to meet the human who had saved them. Greth, Thrax's father, came to Danny's workshop one evening. The big Vicari stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable. I owe you an apology, he said. I questioned your actions. I thought you had manipulated my son. I was wrong. Danny looked up from the pipe he was fixing. You were trying to protect him. I understand that. My son is different now, Greth continued. He questions things. He thinks about why we follow rules instead of just following them. Some in our community say this is bad, that he has been corrupted, but I think perhaps he has been awakened. I didn't mean to change anything, Danny said. I just wanted to keep them alive. Greth's expression softened. That is exactly why the change matters. You did not try to teach them. You simply showed them who you are. And they learned more from your actions than they could have from 1,000 lectures. Over the following weeks, Danny noticed other changes. The cubs' parents started bringing their children to meet him, not because they had to, but because they wanted their young ones to know the human who had risked everything for Vakari cubs. Other species did the same. Danny's small workshop became a gathering place, a spot where beings from different worlds could talk and share stories. Lisa Park visited him one afternoon, a smile on her face. "You have become something of a celebrity. The human who taught Vakari cubs about loyalty." Danny shook his head. "I didn't teach them anything." "Yes, you did. You taught them that sometimes actions speak louder than words. You taught them that loyalty is earned, not commanded. And you taught them that doing the right thing is worth any cost." She paused. "You also taught the collective something important. You taught them that humans can be trusted, that our impulse to protect the vulnerable is not a weakness but a strength. I just did what anyone should do. But not everyone would have done it. That is what makes it matter." Months passed. The cubs grew and changed, shaped by their experience in ways both subtle and profound. They became known throughout the station as the group that had stood with the human, and that reputation followed them. Some Vakari elders disapproved, saying the cubs had been corrupted by human influence, but most saw something else. They saw young Vakari who thought independently, who questioned authority when it was wrong, who understood that loyalty was more than blind obedience. Chief Vorath's replacement was Commander Sarak, a younger Vakari who had voted in Danny's favor at the tribunal. He approached Danny one day in the maintenance bay, watching the human work with quiet interest. "I have a question," Sarak said. "What is the secret to earning such loyalty? My officers follow me because I command them, but those cubs followed you because they chose to. How do you create that kind of bond?" Danny set down his tools and thought about the question. He thought about Kessa's small hand in his, about the fear in her eyes and the trust that had replaced it. He thought about the darkness of the tunnels and the moment when he had given her his last breath, knowing it might kill him. "You don't earn it," he said finally. "You just show up when people need you. The rest takes care of itself." Sarak considered this. It cannot be that simple. It is that simple. It is just not easy. Years later, when the cubs had grown into respected members of the collective, serving in various roles across the station and beyond, they were still asked about the incident. Reporters wanted to know what had happened in those dark tunnels, what Danny had said that had inspired such fierce loyalty. Kessa, now a security officer herself, gave the same answer every time. "He did not leave us." That is all you need to know. Thrax, working as a diplomatic aide, was more expansive. "Danny Carter showed us what it means to stand beside someone when it is hard. We learned that lesson and chose to stand beside him when he needed us. It was not complicated. But the real answer, the one they never spoke aloud, was simpler and deeper than any words could express. Danny had shown them that some things mattered more than rules, more than fear, more than personal safety. He had shown them that protecting others was worth any cost. And they had learned that lesson so well that they could never forget it. The story of the human and the cubs became legend in the collective. It was told to young beings of every species, a tale about loyalty, courage, and the power of doing what is right. Different species drew different lessons from it. Some focused on Danny's bravery, others focused on the cubs' loyalty. But everyone who heard the story understood that something profound had happened in those dark tunnels. Danny never sought fame or recognition. He returned to his quiet life, fixing pipes and wiring, keeping the station running. But he was never alone. The cubs visited him regularly, bringing their own children when they had them, telling the next generation about the human who had saved their parents, and sometimes, late at night, in the empty maintenance tunnels, Danny would pause in his work and remember. He would remember the fear, the darkness, the terrible choice between his own survival and 6 young lives. He would remember giving Kessa that last breath, feeling consciousness slip away and thinking that if this was the end, at least he had done the right thing. He had survived. The cubs had survived. And somehow, in that moment of crisis, they had all learned something about what mattered most. Not rules, not protocols, not species or status or power, just simple, stubborn loyalty between beings who had stood together when it mattered most. Security had demanded an answer for why the cubs stood with the human. The cubs gave nothing but the truth that some bonds cannot be explained, only experienced. Some loyalty cannot be commanded, only earned. And some choices made in darkness and fear. shine bright enough to light the way for generations to come. Danny Carter went back to work, and the Cubs went back to their lives, and the station kept turning in the black void of space. But everything was different now. Everything had changed, and it all started because one human had refused to let children die, and 6 Cubs had refused to let that human face punishment alone. Sometimes that is all it takes to change the galaxy.